Today we are covering the Dual Fury shotgun. Dude, the first time I read the shotgun title, I thought it's called Dual Fury. Anyways, the way you obtain the shotgun is you loot it through a mystical crate, which is found exactly here. The map will be provided in the description if you're interested, but if we check this out in-game, you just have to go to Iron River, the tier 3 location, which is going to be here. You'll find the mysterious crate on the roof, and that's where you will get yourself 60 blueprints of the Dual Fury. I have this gun as 2-star, and if we right click on the weapon and click T, you can see what I get for just 2-starring it. On the 1st star is if you unlock it with 60 blueprints the first time without any upgrades, you will have only 325 damage per pellet, while on 2-star shotgun you will get 343. So that's basically all you're getting, just more weapon damage. That's pretty much it. We're basically getting like a 5.5% weapon damage increase, so just think of it as upgrading your stars as installing a 6% weapon damage substat. The way I upgraded this weapon is I did not learn some things like this axe I've got, long axe. I did not learn it, so I just kept it. And then if you click on the bottom left here, there is a sword button. Click on, let's say the shotgun is Juggernaut, so you click here and it's gonna sort for you, you know, the same type of class the weapon is. So if you click on SMGs, there's no class of Juggernaut. If you click on AK, you can see this one's Juggernaut. If you click on Sniper, this one's Juggernaut. LMG is Juggernaut as well here. So I used this LMG, which I also obtained from mystical crates, to upgrade it, and that's about it. The rest is just the axe, and there's no pistols. And yeah, the other ways to get additional blueprints is just by going to the wish machine right here, click make a wish, and just roll it from Echoes from the Rift. You can see that you cannot buy the blueprint here for Starchrome. That is because you get it for free basically. So this gun is free. You don't need to spend Starchrome. It's literally free. All you need to do is go here, Refinery Pollution Point. So let's talk about how this gun works. Let's right click on Dual Fury, boom, details, let's click X on keyword, there we go. So let's read what it has, what it does. It's, first of all, this gun utilizes burn, so we're gonna read through what burn does real quick. It deals status damage of 10% of your PSI intensity every 0.5 seconds for 6 seconds. So that 0.5 seconds is burn damage just ticking, basically. And then damage increases with more stacks, up to 5 stacks. So default, the maximum stacks we can get is 5. The additional damage is blaze element, blah blah blah, you cannot crit, and so on and forth. It doesn't decay by distance. That's all we care about. That's what literally burn does right over here. Alright, so quickly, we have 883 PSI intensity, right? So you just divide that by 10. That's basically one burn stack right here, you know, because our burn damage is 10% of our PSI intensity. So if I multiply this by 5 now, we get 5 burn stacks. This is 5 burn stacks. This is how much damage you will do with 5 burn stacks. Although now here's the thing, today we are not really focusing on burn that much. We are focusing more on the gun's passive itself and how it works. Now obviously status damage bonus, blaze damage bonus, and then lastly burn damage bonus, if you have any, multiplies all of that damage with your PSI intensity, burn stacks that you have, and then lastly, damage bonus against common enemies is applied and multiplied to the final damage, and then that's how much your burn damage will do. So I'm actually gonna try to show you something here, although I don't have the correct armor for this, but the highest burn damage the shotgun could do unbuffed is probably around, let's see, let's just see. This is a different build, by the way, so this is a status build. You probably could do maximum burn unbuffed 6k burn damage probably with the shotgun, but however, if you do focus on burn too much, then you know your base damage and your crit damage will suffer. So I mean, both could work though, but you know, today we are utilizing this build with crit. We are using completely full crit for the shotgun. We still do a decent amount of burn damage, but you know, the bullet damage is what we care more for the shotgun, really. Let's actually go through how this weapon works now. So, the last shot of each magazine inflicts 1 stack of burn. If all projectiles hit, inflict an additional 1 stack. So, you know, the first shot does not matter on the shotgun. Like, it doesn't completely matter. I'm burning right now, and don't worry about that. But basically, we have one bullet now. If I reload the gun and shoot once, we will basically never burn the target if you just shoot one bullet and reload. So you can only burn the target if with your last bullet in the magazine. So like this, boom. And now the target's burning. If it's burning and you keep shooting it with the last bullet over and over like that, your burn stacks are gonna just keep stacking, right? There you go, it's increasing, 1,500. And yeah, it's a little bit buggy, but it just keeps stacking if you hit the last pellet. Now, the shotgun's a little bit weird because sometimes the burn disappears and it doesn't restack or doesn't, you know, refresh the time of the burn when shooting the last bullet for some reason. I don't know if that's a bug or if that's intentional, but... And yeah, so if you hit all the pellets, so let's say you hit only 2 pellets or something, then you will inflict only 1 stack where... Shut the hell up. Whereas if you hit all the 6 pellets with the shotgun, you will trigger 2 stacks. After hitting the enemy with all projectiles 4 times, enter a special burn state. Okay, so first of all, if you don't hit all the pellets, you will never burn. You can see that I'm missing like 1 pellet or something, and my character is never burning. My character is supposed to burn, so if I hit the dummy 4 times with all projectiles, boom, we're burning now. And whenever we burn, I'll get into that later, but let's keep reading the stats. When you enter a special burn state where you lose some HP, you will increase 20% of your attack, which increases your weapon damage, and then vulnerability plus 10% for 8 seconds. So when you're burning, you will gain 20% attack. Just basically your wide damage is going to be higher. Look at this, I'm burning now, and you can see my wide damage is 1,600 now to the dummy. And when I stop burning, well, I will just do less damage basically. There you go. And now if I shoot, oh, my gun broke. Let's repair that sucker. So that's basically all it does, is just increases your damage when you enter the burn state. You can see how my damage is increasing by lots. The vulnerability 10% basically just means that you'll just deal more damage with your weapon damage, crit damage, weak spot damage, and as well burn. Keep in mind, vulnerability means that you just deal more damage in general with everything, not just weapon damage, with everything. It's a multiplicative bonus, which is great. So as well as, you know, if you combine this with a Wildfire right here, which if you mark enemies, real quick, what Wildfire does is we're going to go through here. The bullseye. Highlight marked targets will be outlined and suffer from vulnerability plus 8%. So if you shoot a target like this, boom, you mark the target, it will now receive 8% more damage. And if you combine and put on a vulnerability amplifier on this pistol, which adds 8% more, then in total you will gain 16% vulnerability. So you will mark the enemy. It's going to have 16% damage increase. If you enter burn state with your shotgun, guess what? That's another 10% vulnerability, and you're doing 26% more damage to the target by burning and by marking the enemy. So take a look at this damage. I'm going to mark it again. Boom, boom, boom. We marked it. Swap to the shotgun, and just look at that damage increase. We're doing 7k crit damage. It's pretty cool. When you're burning, you cannot die from the burn yourself. It will not fall below 0, as it says here in the shotgun. And remember that you gain no debuffs from this. You only lose a little bit of HP when you're on fire. Like here you can see my HP is dropping a little bit, but it's not a problem really. You can basically avoid this by using like a mod, you know, on your chest piece. Like if you kill an enemy, you will get healed. Or you can use a mod that heals you on the shotgun. When defeating an enemy affected by burn, recover 5% HP. It's not really a problem when you burn, you don't lose that much HP, so, you know. The last line on the passive says, hitting enemies affected by burn with all projectiles has a 50% chance to refill 1 bullet. You have to hit all the pellets though. If you miss 1 shotgun pellet, you know, like just 1 pellet is not hit, then you will not be able to recover that 1 bullet. So as long as the target's burning like this, as you shoot the target, you have a chance to recover 1 bullet. As you can see, I don't need to reload. It's just literally becoming a SMG at this point. A machine gun shotgun, dude. We're gonna go through what calibration I'm using for this gun. There's 3 ways you could really go with. You could go with reload speed plus 150% and mag capacity minus 30%. Keep in mind you will need to compensate the magazine capacity for the shotgun by 7.2% magazine capacity substat on any mod. Like, you know, just 7.2% is enough if you don't wear Lone Wolf parts, because if you do wear Lone Wolf parts, then you don't need to worry about that, because Lone Wolf parts will give you 10% magazine capacity. The only reason we need that 7.2% magazine capacity is because the bullet is just going to be 1 if you have 0% magazine capacity on your mods. But you could go with reload speed 150%, Or you could go with magazine capacity increase and reload speed slower. If you go with that though, however, you would need to compensate your reload speed with reload speed bonus on your mods. You could also go with a full status damage on the shotgun, but today we are going for crit damage and crit rate. So we are using 2 crit rates on this gun. You could actually use 1 crit rate and 1 crit damage for a little bit of a mix, you know. Instead of going full crit, you'll just increase your crit damage a little bit and still have that crit rate. Now if we click C and see our details, this is my crit rate, 38.6%. Crit damage is 93%. Weak spot damage 32%. Weapon damage is 65.8%. And yeah, that's basically the stats we got. 16% damage bonus against common enemies. Let's go through the mods we're using. First of all, the shotgun. This doesn't really matter because remember, we're focusing more on crit damage and weapon damage rather than status damage and burn. Burn does help in damage a little bit, but not that much. So what you can go with the shotgun mod. Obviously, if you do go with full status damage and blaze damage, then you could possibly go with Embers. And what Embers really does is, I'm gonna put it on real quick. So I'm gonna trigger a lot of stacks for the burn. See, it's burning right now. So as you trigger 5 stacks, after the duration ends of the burn, the stacks get halved, and then it just keeps burning until it runs out again, and then it gets halved again, you know. So the stacks just keep halving and halving and halving until it's 1 stack left, and it will just fade out. That's what Embers does. And it's really good for basically if you just shoot the enemy once, or like, you know, couple times, you just leave them to burn and you just leave them be there. They will eventually get to 1 HP. You can just finish them off later when they get close to you. So this mod is good only if you go full in on status damage, elemental damage. Ideal mod would be for this build is probably just put in a when defeating an enemy affected by burn, you will recover 5% HP. You can go with Blaze Blessing, and what this does is this will just heal you when you kill an enemy that is burning. And you could also use Flame Resonance, max burn stack +2. So instead of 5 maximum burn stacks, you will be able to stack 7 burn stacks, except it will burn 20% less. And as we saw, if we go check out how long burn burns for, it burns for 6 seconds. 6 seconds minus 20% would be 4.8 seconds. So if you did put Flame Resonance on it. Now, I do recommend putting Flame Resonance if you don't like Embers, because you'll be able to stack more burns, you'll do a little bit more damage. It's either you put Embers and Blaze Blessing for the heals. If you do run status damage and elemental damage, then just go with Flame Resonance. As for the substats, you want to have crit damage and weapon damage for this gun, and then possibly reload speed bonus. You can actually have crit damage, weapon damage, and reload speed bonus, or magazine capacity. However, that is extremely rare to get such a mod, so good luck. As for the secondary pistol, I'm just using a Wildfire to mark enemies, so you know, you mark a boss real quick, boom, 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 and then you swap your gun, easy. You deal more damage to the boss. That's why this pistol is so good. It's a support weapon. It always works everywhere. If you don't like the pistol, you can use a crossbow, purple crossbow. It's the same thing. It utilizes bullseye. It does this exact same thing, except you have to hit the weak spot to mark the enemy. So with the Wildfire, you don't have to hit the weak spot. You can just shoot until it gets marked. But for this weapon, we're just using Vulnerability Amplifier, and that's it. We just mark the enemies. We don't do anything else with this gun. For the helmet, we are using a first move advantage. After reloading, crit rate +10% and crit damage +20% for 2 seconds. Since we're using the shotgun, we have only 2 bullets. You know, we reload fairly quickly, so this mod is great. However, if you don't have a good mod for first move advantage, then you can use momentum up, which is this. You want crit damage and weapon damage as a substat. If you don't have either of those, then your third option would be Deviation Expert. This will make your gun fire faster, and it will give you status damage as well. For the substats, you can also go with crit damage and weapon damage. You don't necessarily have to go with status damage and elemental. And that would have to be called violent instead of talents on the mod itself as a suffix. But yeah, the best mod would be probably momentum up with crit damage and weapon damage on it. But since I don't have a good mod for it, I'm using a first move advantage because this one has weapon damage and crit damage as substats. For the mask, we're using a retrusion explosion. Basically what this does is crit damage +40% against enemies with burn. So this is really amazing. Like, If you get a mod with crit damage on it, weapon damage on it, and then, you know, magazine capacity or reload speed bonus, the gun just becomes, it reloads faster and faster if you keep stacking it, and your crit damage and weapon damage is going to be insane with this mod. Honestly, 40% is a lot. So this is the mod we're using because obviously we're going full crit and crit damage with this build. So for the gloves, we are using a crit amplifier, violent, crit rate plus 10%, and crit damage plus 15%. Substats is crit damage 15%, weapon damage, basically you just want to have crit damage and weapon damage for the substats. For the boots, we're using covered advance. Again, you want to have crit damage and weapon damage. I have weak spot damage. This is basically for my bingo and doombringer build. I was running weak spot damage, you know, but crit damage would be better. Then we have the top piece. I'm using weapon damage and crit damage, and then it has a reload speed bonus on it. Now, you could be using a crit amplifier or crit enhancement. There you go. So if you do use this crit rate, crit damage enhancement, I don't know why the icons are not loading, but this would be a great mod. Instead of the damage against normal enemies, you could get weapon damage, and that would be perfect. You could use that. But we are using, you know, weapon damage 9% and crit damage 9% on the top piece. And for the pants, we're using status amplification, talents. Again, you don't want talents, you want crit damage and weapon damage. Precision would work as well, like you could have weak spot with weapon damage substats, but crit damage would be better since we have up to 70% crit rate when we're using this gun. So crit damage is the way, man. And the reason we're using status amplification is because there's no other mod to use. And, you know, since we keep reloading the gun, it says when the magazine is empty, which means I have to fire 2 bullets. Boom, our magazine is empty. And we just gained a 10% status damage increase, which is right here, elemental amplifier. Status damage plus 10% for 12 seconds up to 3 stacks. And they are separate stacks, so if you trigger once, we reload it, boom, that's 1 stack. We trigger it again, reload, boom, that's another stack. These timers are separate for these stacks right here, elemental amplifier. Again, you also cannot reload the gun on 1 bullet. Like if I reload here, the mod will not give me that 10%, so you have to reload the gun on 0 bullets to get this elemental amplifier buff. Now, instead of status amplification, since we're not really, you know, caring about burn that much, it will still help in damage a little bit. But for the substats, again, you want to go with crit damage and weapon damage. You could also use like a reload rampage after killing an enemy, refill 2 bullets from reserves. You could be using that, but I think this mod is bugged. It doesn't seem like it's giving weapon damage and status damage until next reload. I tested this on ARs. Maybe the stats are just not showing up on the details here, but I cannot tell the difference, so I don't know. But you could be using Deadshot, but Deadshot will only give you 5% crit damage increase. So like, what's the point? Because we have 2 bullets in the shotgun, so like, what's the point? So that's why I'm sticking with status amplification. Now let's get to the armor we are using. For this build, we will need Lone Wolf 4 parts. Magazine capacity plus 10%, crit rate 5%, and then we will get, you know, 1 stack of Lone Wolf Shadow with every 2 weapon crit hits. So if my weapon crit hits 2 times, we get 1 Lone Shadow stack. On the intro, you saw my DPS on the dummy test. So that's what it was. It was stacked to 10, and if you stack it to 10, we will basically get 60% crit damage from these 10 stacks, which is amazing for this build. If you wear 4 parts, you will gain additional 2 stacks, which is gonna give you an additional 12% crit damage, and it will give you 8% crit rate when you reload the weapon. So reload, boom, crit rate goes up by 8%. Now obviously you can see I have 38% crit rate. If I reload, boom, we're burning now, so we have 71.6% crit rate. Because why I have so much crit rate is because of these gloves that I'm using. These gloves basically do this. When affected by burn, weapon damage plus 15% and crit rate plus 15%. And the drifter gloves are obtained from the Wish Machine. You cannot get them from mystical crates. They're strictly obtained from Wish Machine only and bought there or rolled from there. I'm gonna quickly explain how these gloves work. You might think that if you burn the enemy, you're gaining a crit rate and weapon damage if the enemy is burning, right? But no, how these gloves work is when you are burning, you will get 15% weapon damage and crit rate 15%. Don't get confused and misinformed. This description is also dev's fault as well. They should put in and say that when you are burning, but not when affected by burn. What's affected by burn? We don't know what's affected by burn. So these gloves are strictly made for the shotgun because on, you know, after you hit 4 shots, like boom, boom, we enter the burn state. We're now burning. We're affected by burn. and we gain that crit rate as we're burning and weapon damage as well. You can see it's dropping because I stopped burning. If you're burning, you can also see above your health bar how long you're gonna keep burning, and the timer just disappears. Boom. So if you're running this build, 100% you will need to use Drifter Gauntlets for that increase, you know, of crit rate and weapon damage. Although I was actually thinking, what if I just don't use this and instead I will go with 2 savior parts. We will get weapon damage 10% and status damage 10%, and then I would go with Bastille 1 part, which will give us another 10% weapon damage. Now, compare that with the Drifter Gauntlets, we would be basically trading just 5% weapon damage and 10% status damage over 15% crit rate. Would that be worth it? I don't know. But Drifter Gauntlets, they're okay, I guess. The only problem is that they only work when you're burning, not all the time. So it's kind of you know, but I mean, this is the only option you got for the key armor with this build, because we're running a crit build. So these gloves plus 4 Lone Wolf parts plus 1 Bastille part, that's all 6 parts, and you know, that's basically the armor that I use for this gun. Now, of course, on top of that, the deviation you can use is the Pyro Dino, so increases target blaze damage received by 29.4% when attacking targets affected by burn. It will also cause explosion 1 time. I think if you stack your burn stacks fully, the deviation is just gonna completely annihilate the target. It's gonna do like 50k blaze damage or something. But yeah, pretty juicy. Now the gun itself, the accessories we're using is just a laser sight. That's all we're using. Tungsten ammo as well. For the cradle, we are using a handgun enhancement, 20% more damage. Deviation master for more deviation damage. 25% damage increase for tactile combo. Status enhancement, 25%. Honestly, this is not that important, but I mean, hey, if you hit headshots, you'll just get increased 25% for your blaze damage. Then you could put sprint for faster sprinting. This one doesn't really matter. Like, you will get an increased damage, you know, for your blaze damage for 10 seconds and stacks up to 3 times. I mean, it does help, but you could remove this and put in sprint if you just want to sprint faster. But if you want maximum damage with burn, then you can put this on. And then basically what this does is you have to kill an enemy with burn, not with your bullet, but with burn. And if you keep killing more enemies, it will just stack to 60% damage increase for 10 seconds. Then we're using Steady Hand while in Fortress Warfare or Fast Gunner status. Weak spot damage is 40%. This one doesn't really matter. What matters is that weak spot damage to the bullseye is 20% increased. So that's why we're using this pistol right here. We mark enemies, and when you mark them in the headshot, you will do 20% more damage. And a lot of people argue in the comments with me saying that the Steady Hand works only while being in Fortress Warfare, and no, you're wrong. I'm going to test this and show it to you so people stop spreading misinformation. I'm going to go naked, and I'm going to use a simple weapon that basically has no buffs or anything, which in this case is the green pistol that we're using. So we don't have anything in our cradle, completely nothing. We're gonna get this pistol and we're gonna remove the mod of it. We should be doing 958. Okay, we're doing 958 damage. Take a look at this. We're gonna put in the Steady Hand. We're doing 958 still. We're gonna swap to our pistol, mark the enemy. Now we're doing 1456. Quickly go to the cradle, unequip. 1294. And if you still don't believe me, okay, look at this. We have weak spot damage 60%, okay? Weapon damage bonus is 0%. So I'm gonna mark the enemy. I marked it. We're doing 809 damage to the body, okay? And 1456 to the head. Right now, if I take this off, 1294, right? Since it adds 20% weak spot damage, we're gonna do 809 multiplied by 1.8. And what's the number we're gonna get? 1456. So that's the exact number. As for Bounty Hunter, after defeating a unit you marked, weapon damage plus 25%, V-spot damage plus 35% lasting for 15 seconds. As long as you have Wildfire, or as long as you have a secondary weapon as a bullseye weapon, if you kill them while they're marked, you will gain that bonus from this Cradle perk, which is great. That's a huge boost for PvE. Now, conclusion, is this weapon good for PvP? And honestly, in my opinion, not really, because you need to hit the enemy 4 times to enter that burn state to deal more damage to them. Or, you know, you need to hit your last pellet exactly on the enemy to make them burn. Maybe this build could work with just full elemental and status damage for, you know, only PvP, but however for PvE that wouldn't be that great. I think crit damage would be just way better for this shotgun. You gain a lot of damage from that crit damage. I would avoid using this gun in PvP. Like, compared the Dual Fury versus Doombringer, the Doombringer just needs to hit first shot and then boom, the second shot is gonna instantly kill you, while the Dual Fury needs to hit you 4 times, you know, to get that special buff, and it's still not gonna do the same damage as the Doombringer. Doombringer is just on another whole level, but the shotgun is still a great starter gun, you know, in phase 1 and phase 2. You could be using this gun in phase 1. You can see I don't own the Drifter gauntlets, but if you are in phase 1, you could just buy them. By the way, these gloves cost 8,000 Starchrome, which is kind of expensive, kind of not worth it in my eyes. But I mean, if you're using this gun since phase 1, then at this point, you just have to stick with it, you know? Because eventually you're going to start loving the build. The more you use it, the more you will have an understanding of how to build it, how to optimize it and make it better and feel better than other guns. But honestly, every gun in this game feels great as long as you know how to build it, as long as you know how to optimize it and what mods to use for it. It's always going to be great. All guns are balanced, except this gun right here. That gun is terrible, holy moly. But yeah, these are my thoughts for PvP. If you want to bring this gun to PvP, then try to mix it up with status damage and elemental damage instead of full crit, because this build is strictly just for PvE that I've shown for you guys today. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this build, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, take care, and peace out.